I never thought I'd be the guy writing in a relationship advice subreddit about something this brutal, but here I am. 3 days before my wedding, I found out the woman I thought I knew inside out, had been cheating on me during our anniversary trip. And not just with some random guy, she was with my best friend, David. Yeah, David. The guy I've trusted with everything since college. The one who's been like a brother to me. Turns out, he's been sleeping with my behind my back for months. It started with small things that I ignored. She'd make excuses when I asked if she was tired after work, say she needed me time, or that she was stressed out. I was busy with work planning the wedding, so I brushed past it. But last week, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo. Just a simple shot of her in a hotel room in a silky nightdress with a smirk I'd never seen before. Next to her was David, leaning in clothes, his eyes half closed, like he was about to kiss her. I stared at that image for what felt like forever. My palms slicked with sweat, my stomach clenched so tight I thought I'd throw up. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at it like some kind of sick, twisted puzzle. I figured it was a prank, some sick joke. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew it was. I could feel the heat rise from my chest, a mixture of shock and pure rage. The next day I decided to confront her. I kept my voice flat, cold, almost detached. "Who is this?" I asked, holding my phone out. Her face froze, her eyes darted away. She was caught in a lie, plain and simple. "It's nothing," she said, voice trembling. "Just a stupid joke, someone's messing with us." But I knew better. I felt my fists clench, my knuckles go white. Lies, all lies. That was the start of the red flags I had ignored for too long. And that's when I realized how much I'd been blind. I'd seen her flirt with David at parties, but I told myself it was harmless, that maybe I was overthinking. But now I saw the truth in the photo. She'd crossed a line I'd never imagined. My stomach sank into a pit. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we'd built right before what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives? I've always been the kind of guy to believe in second chances, but this was a different level. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was a calculated betrayal. I knew I had to do something. Not just to protect my dignity, but to make her understand that messing with my life, my trust, had consequences. I started formulating a plan, something cold, precise, and final. But I'll tell you this, once you see the truth, everything shifts. The world feels different. The betrayal isn't just a crack in the surface, it's a crack in your whole foundation, and you can't unsee it. I'm not the kind of person who's going to go quietly into the night. Not anymore. I'm going to make her regret this mess she's made of us. But first, I had to get all the evidence, all the facts. And that's where it all began. I glanced around the room, feeling the weight of what I'd uncovered. My hands were trembling. But I forced myself to stay calm. I knew I had to be smart. No screaming, no yelling, at least not yet. I just needed to plan my next move carefully. Because once I put this all together, there's no going back. And I was already feeling the first flickers of a plan forming, something she wouldn't see coming. I took a deep breath, told myself I'd handle it with a cool head. But inside, my stomach was churning with betrayal, anger, and a strange sense of relief. Relief that the truth was out finally. Now I just had to make sure she paid for it. I spent the next couple of days like a patient ticking bomb. Every time I thought about her, about David, about the betrayal, my stomach twisted. I couldn't eat much. My palms stayed slick, cold sweat soaking my fingertips as I pieced together everything I'd discovered. I needed proof, hard proof. The kind that couldn't be dismissed or spun away. So I started digging. I went through her phone, her emails, her social media accounts, anything I could get my hands on. I wasn't expecting her to be stupid, but I found enough to confirm my suspicions. Hidden texts, secret messages that weren't just innocent flirting. They were laced with desire, with plans, with promises. She had been meeting him in secret, exchanging code words, sneaking away for hours. It was all right there in black and white, like a map leading straight to her betrayal. The physical evidence was the worst. I found a series of receipts from a hotel she'd booked under a fake name. Her phone had been connected to their Wi-Fi, and the timestamps aligned precisely with her secret meetings. I even found her lipstick stain on a napkin she'd accidentally left behind in her purse. I held it in my hand and felt my jaw tighten. The proof was overwhelming. There was no denying it anymore. I remember standing in my living room, staring at the stain, feeling a strange mixture of disbelief and cold fury. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me this deeply, right when I thought we were finally about to start our life together? I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. My vision blurred at the edges, and I had to remind myself I needed a plan, not just to cut her out of my life, but to make her regret it, to make her understand she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I called David, not to scream, yet just to hear his voice to confirm what I already knew. "You slept with her," I said low, like I was speaking to a stranger. "Tell me everything. How long has this been going on?" Silence on the other end, then a hesitant, "It's not what you think." That line I'd heard so many times from cheaters. I didn't buy it. I told him, "Save it. I want the truth, all of it, and I want you to know I'm not coming after you just yet, but I will if I need to." Now I had the evidence. The betrayal was real, undeniable. I could just left it there, walked away, called off the wedding. But that wasn't enough. She needed to know I was fully aware and that I was planning something. I'd spent hours thinking about revenge, about how to make her pay without crossing a line I couldn't come back from. My plan was simple but brutal, yet clean. I wanted her to see everything she'd lost, everything she'd betrayed. I'd give her one last night to think she'd gotten away with it, and then I'd make sure she knew the truth would come out in a way she couldn't deny. I wasn't about to destroy her entirely, just enough to make her realize the cost of her lies. That meant I'd set her up somewhat. I knew her habits, her routines. She liked to go to that little coffee shop near her office, the one with the flaky croissants and the stupidly comfortable chairs. I decided I'd leave a trail of breadcrumbs, some fake messages, some carefully placed evidence that showed her meeting with David one last time. Something that would make her think she was caught, but wouldn't blow up everything just yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to have her realize she had no way out. The night I executed my plan, I felt sick. My stomach was knotted tight, and I kept imagining her face when she found out she'd been caught red-handed. I left a few items, the fake messages, a few personal belongings of hers I'd planted, stuff she'd recognize. Then I waited. When she finally saw it, her face was a mixture of shock and panic. She called me immediately, her voice trembling, trying to deny it, to explain away everything. But I just listened, feeling my jaw tight. I told her I knew everything. I told her I was done, that I'd had enough of her lies. She begged, of course. Said she loved me, that it was a mistake, that she'd never do it again. That's when I told her, "It's over, don't call me, don't come back. I want the keys to your apartment and I want you out by tomorrow." That moment I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was like finally breathing after holding my breath for days. I was done being the fool. I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible, and now I had to face the fallout. The fallout was immediate. She left in tears, leaving her keys on the table, her face pale with shock. I watched her go, feeling the cold satisfaction that maybe, just maybe, I'd made her feel a fraction of what I'd felt all along. The quiet aftermath was brutal. I was raw, hollow, but relieved. For the first time in days, I slept. Through the night, I knew one thing for sure: I'd never let someone treat me like that again. And I'd never forget how it felt to be betrayed by the people I trusted most. But I also knew I'd come out stronger. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming myself from the wreckage of a relationship I thought was real. Now, I was ready to start over, free of lies and secrets. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The morning after I handed her the keys, everything felt strangely quiet, like the world had pressed pause for a moment. No more lies, no more pretending. I watched her pack her things with trembling hands, and honestly, part of me wanted to feel pity or some twisted guilt. But mostly I felt numb. The betrayal ran so deep that I couldn't summon anything else but a cold, bitter satisfaction. She kept trying to explain, her voice cracking as she begged me to listen. "Please, I love you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "This was a mistake. It's just a stupid fling. Don't do this." I looked at her and felt nothing but disgust. "You lied to me for months," I said, voice steady but cold. "You betrayed everything we stood for. How can I believe anything you say now?" She looked at me like I'd punched her in the gut, and that moment made me realize how completely she'd shattered what I thought was real. I walked out of the apartment that day feeling like I'd finally cut off a tumor. The ache in my chest was still there, but it was different now, more distant, like a dull ache instead of a burning heat. I knew I'd lost a lot, but I also knew I gained something else, peace, or at least the beginning of it. The messy aftermath was settling in, and I had to decide what was next. While she was busy crying and packing, I started thinking about the fallout. How would she react? Would she try to hurt me? Would I hear from her again? The truth was, I didn't care much for her feelings anymore. What mattered now was my own. I needed to make damn sure she understood exactly what she lost, what her betrayal had cost her. I reached out to a couple of friends, not for sympathy but for advice. One of them, Jason, a guy I knew from work, said, "You did the right thing. Don't let her manipulate you into feeling bad. She chose her path." That helped more than I expected. I'd spent so long trying to be understanding, trying to see her side, but this was different. This was pure, unfiltered betrayal. I also started thinking about the next step. I needed closure, something I could hold on to. I wanted her to feel the loss, the guilt, what it was like to be dumped by someone she thought was her forever. So I kept digging into her social media, her contacts, her messages. I needed to be prepared for what was coming next. The way I saw it, she'd probably try to spin it, deny everything, or maybe even lash out. That's why I wanted to be ready. In the days that followed, she tried to reach out, but I didn't answer. I didn't want her thinking I was weak or that I was going to cave. I knew better. I kept busy, focused on work, on clearing my head, and most of all on making sure I didn't fall into that familiar trap of regret. The truth was, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of the chaos she'd unleashed. One thing I did do, though, was gather all the evidence I had, screenshots, receipts, the photos, the texts. I wanted to keep everything safe, just in case I needed to show someone or prove my point later. It was a lot to process, but I knew I couldn't just let this go quietly, not after what she'd done. I had to make her understand that betrayal doesn't just disappear. It leaves scars. And then out of nowhere, I got a message from David. I hesitated before opening it, knowing what it would say. He wrote, "Look, I messed up. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me someday. I never meant to hurt you." That's the kind of cowardice I expected. I wasn't angry at him anymore, at least not in the way I was before. I just felt emptier. I responded once, clear and cold. "You and I both crossed a line. I don't want to hear from you again." That was it. I didn't need apologies or explanations. I needed to move on and rebuild what I'd lost. The betrayal had broken something inside me, but it also lit a fire. I realized I'd been giving too much of myself to someone who didn't deserve it. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to put this behind me. I've made my decision. I'm done with her, done with the lies. I want a future where trust isn't a fragile thing I have to guard. I want peace. But I know one thing. I won't forget what she did. Not for a long time. And I won't let her forget it either. Next, I plan to block her everywhere, change my phone number, and focus on rebuilding myself. That's the only way I'll truly move forward. Sometimes, you have to lose in order to win back yourself. And honestly, it feels like the first step towards something better. A week had passed since I handed her the keys, and I'd managed to keep my distance, but the weight of it all still pressed heavily on my chest. Every day I woke up with a knot in my stomach, and every night I replayed her face, caught between tears and panic, like a haunted memory. But I wasn't just sitting around letting the pain settle. No, I was plotting. I had to. I knew she'd try to spin it, deny everything, or make some kind of scene. That's what people like her do when they get caught: lie, manipulate, pretend innocence. I wasn't dumb enough to think she'd go quietly. So I started working on a plan to make her see the real damage she'd done, in a way that would hit her where it hurt: her reputation, her sense of control. First, I reached out to a couple of old friends, people who knew her well enough to confirm her pattern of lies and manipulation. I needed allies, or at least witnesses, in case she tried to create chaos. It was all about control now. I didn't want her to spin her web of lies and make me look like the villain. I wanted her to face her own mess, and I was determined to make sure she paid for it, without crossing some line I'd regret later. I also started gathering evidence just in case. I kept a folder on my phone with all the photos, the receipts, the messages I'd taken screenshots of. her secret meeting spots, her fake names. I wanted everything organized and ready for the moment I needed it. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting myself from her potential retaliation. If she tried to come back or manipulate the situation, I'd already have everything I needed to shut her down. Meanwhile, I kept my daily routine as normal as possible. I went to work, hit the gym, hung out with friends, and pretended I was okay. Inside, though, I was anything but. The betrayal was like a splinter, constantly reminding me of how I'd been so blind. I trusted her with my life and she'd thrown it all away. But part of me also felt lighter, like I was finally shedding the weight of her lies. One night I decided I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. Not a full-on attack, but a little nudge. I sent her a message, just a simple, non-confrontational note. I played it cool, pretending I didn't know much. "Hey, I hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to say, I still think you're making a huge mistake, but it's your life." I knew she'd read it and I wanted her to feel like I was still watching, still waiting, that I wasn't going to disappear quietly. Of course, she responded, of course she did. She tried to spin it, plead for another chance, say she was sorry, say she still loved me. I read her messages and felt a surge of contempt. "You lost me," I typed back. "Don't bother contacting me again." That was the last thing I wanted her to think, I was some broken guy begging for scraps. I was done. I'd already made up my mind, but I wanted her to know that I was serious about moving on completely. But even with that, I knew I had to prepare for the worst. She might try to come back, or worse, try to sabotage me. I started changing my passwords, blocking her on everything, and deleting all traces of her from my social media. I wanted to make sure she couldn't reach me or manipulate the situation anymore. I also reached out to a lawyer, just to get a sense of my legal options if she tried to make a scene or spread lies publicly. As I sat back and looked at my phone that night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. I had taken control of the chaos, set the stage so that I'd be the one in charge from now on. It wasn't just about getting revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity, about making sure she understood she'd lost the best thing she ever had. That night, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I closed my eyes, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and for once I didn't think about her. Instead, I thought about what's next. I know I'll never forget this pain, but I also know I'll come out stronger. It's a strange thing. Sometimes betrayal opens your eyes to how much you were giving away, how much you were willing to overlook. No more. Tomorrow, I plan to go to the bank, change my account details, and move forward with a clean slate. I want her to wake up and realize that her lies have consequences, that she can't just cheat and walk away. That's the lesson I want her to learn. Because I refuse to be a pawn in her game anymore. I'm done playing nice, and from here on out, it's all about rebuilding myself, stone by stone. The days that followed felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Every time I thought about her, about what she did, my stomach clenched. But I kept my focus, knowing that I had to stay strong if I wanted to come out of this intact. I made a conscious decision to take control of the chaos rather than let it control me. I spent hours making sure every piece of evidence I had was organized and stored securely. Photos, messages, receipts, all carefully backed up on a cloud drive I set up specifically for this purpose. I even set up a fake social media profile, just in case she tried to reach out or start trouble. That way, I could monitor her activity without giving her any real access to me. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw my way. Meanwhile, I started subtly shaping my narrative. I reached out to a few close friends, people I trusted, to let them know what was really going on. Not because I needed their approval, but because I didn't want her to spin some twisted story to make herself look innocent. I told them to be cautious if she tried to gaslight or manipulate the situation. It felt good to have allies, even if I'd been left to pick up the pieces alone. One thing I refused to do was respond to her emotional appeals. She kept trying to contact me, texts, calls, even a couple of awkward social media messages. Every time she did, I ignored her, blocking her on everything I could. Her words were empty, her tears hollow. I knew she'd try to make me doubt myself, to make me feel guilty. But I wasn't falling for it. I'd already made my decision. She'd lost me long before I uncovered her lies. but I'd be lying if I said I was completely immune to the chaos she was creating. I could still feel the weight of betrayal pressing down, and part of me was angry, really angry. Not just at her, but at myself for trusting her so blindly. I kept replaying moments in my mind, looking for the signs I missed, the red flags I ignored. It was a bitter pill, realizing I'd been so blind, so naive. To try and regain some sense of normalcy, I threw myself into work and the gym. I needed the distraction, the physical exertion to burn off the frustration. It helped, partly. But the core of me still felt broken, like a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. I knew I'd have to pick those pieces up one by one and rebuild. It was going to take time, but I was determined. One night, I sat alone, realizing that I'd finally reached a point where I could look at myself in the mirror without feeling like I had let someone destroy me. I needed to do one more thing, something decisive. I decided I'd go to a lawyer to discuss my options about property, joint accounts, and anything else that might tie us together. I didn't want her to have control over anything that was rightfully mine. That day, I called and made an appointment. When I explained the situation, the lawyer looked at me with a calm, professional expression. "You have every right to protect yourself and your assets," he said. "It's best to get everything in writing, and if she tries to make trouble, you'll have legal backing." That was the last piece of the puzzle. I was finally taking steps to safeguard my future free from her lies and manipulations. Now I'm sitting here reflecting on everything. I still feel the sting, like a bruise that won't quite fade, but I also feel a strange sense of clarity. I realized I was giving too much of myself away, trusting blindly, ignoring the signs. From now on, I'm going to be more cautious, more aware. No more blind trust. No more overlooking the red flags. I know I'll never forget what she did, but I also know I need to move forward. I'll never let someone betray me like that again. I don't need her apology, her tears, or her excuses. I need to rebuild myself piece by piece and work on trusting myself again. I want to believe in love, but only when it's genuine, when it's earned, not given blindly. Tomorrow, I plan to hand over the final paperwork to my lawyer, something concrete I can hold on to. I'll walk away from this chapter with a clear conscience, knowing I did everything I could to protect myself. The lesson is simple: trust is earned, not freely given. And if someone betrays that trust, they lose their right to be part of your life. That's what I'm holding on to now. That's what will carry me forward. The final step was the easiest but also the hardest. I sat in my apartment, the folder of all my evidence laid out in front of me, screenshots, receipts, her last messages, and took a long, deep breath. I knew exactly what I had to do. I picked up the envelope, the one with the keys, and placed it on the kitchen counter. My hands trembled slightly, but I was steady. This was the end of it all. I grabbed my car keys and headed to the lawyer's office. The entire process took maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. I handed over the documents, signed the papers, and made sure everything was finalized. I watched her name and my name be officially separated, each one of us starting fresh. As I left the office, I felt a fleeting sense of relief, like I'd finally closed this chapter, sealed the wound. I knew I'd always carry the scars, but I also knew I could heal. Walking back to my car, I looked up at the sky. It was a clear night, stars scattered across the dark canvas. I felt the cool air on my face, the kind of quiet that's almost deafening. The betrayal had been a blow, but I'd chosen to rebuild instead of breaking. I'd taken control back from her lies, her betrayal, and that feeling of power, however small, was intoxicating. It reminded me that I still had strength I didn't realize I possessed. Driving home, I turned off my phone. No messages, no calls, no drama, just silence. That's what I needed. I finally understood that the pain, the anger, the betrayal, they all belonged to her now. I was moving on, and I was doing it on my own terms. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. In the days that followed, I began to focus on myself. Started going out more, reconnecting with friends, and rediscovering what made me happy. I even signed up for a new hobby, something I'd never considered before. Small steps, but they felt huge, like reclaiming pieces of myself I'd lost along the way. Looking back, I realized that betrayal is a brutal teacher. It teaches you about trust, about boundaries, about your own resilience. It reveals who's genuine and who's just pretending. And most importantly, it forces you to confront who you are when everything falls apart. I never thought I'd be the guy to say this, but I'm grateful for the wake-up call. Not because I wanted to be betrayed, but because I now see clearly what I won't tolerate anymore. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore red flags. And when the truth finally hits you, don't waste time feeling guilty or trying to fix what's broken. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. Because healing begins the moment you decide to stop accepting lies, to stop accepting betrayal, and to start valuing yourself again. So this is my ending. I handed over the keys, closed the door on that chapter, and stepped into the light of a new beginning. It's not perfect, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely free.